Hello, spreadsheet scholars. I hope you're ready for some more Excel goodness. We're going to learn how we can find real quarterly financial data. We'll use the data from the Inditex Corporation, the world's largest fashion retailer and parent of the tech-savvy fast fashion powerhouse Zara, and we'll use this data to illustrate a host of Excel skills and techniques. So let's suit up for more big learning. So let's begin. I'm going to launch Excel. I'm going to double-click on Blank Workbook. I'm going to double-click the title bar in the Excel window to expand it to full screen. And then I'll make my worksheet bigger by double-clicking on the 100% in the lower right-hand corner and selecting 200%. That should make things easier to see. And we'll start first by taking a look at the financials of the Inditex Corporation. So in A1, I'm going to type in Inditex Corporation. And then in A3, I'll enter a quarter. In B3, revenue. And in C3, net income. Then I'm going to open my browser. I'm going to head over to finance.google.com. And in the search box, I'm going to type in Inditex. Now, I'm not going to press return. I'm going to press the down arrow, and I'm going to select this first option here, this Industrial de Diseño Textil S.A. That's actually the Inditex Corporation. And you'll notice the second line under it that's a little bit grayed out says BME:ITX. BME is the stock exchange, and ITX is the ticker symbol for the Inditex stock on the BME exchange. BME stands for Bolsa y Mercados Españoles. Pardon me for my terribly accented Spanish, but that's the primary stock exchange in Spain. So with this selected, let's press return and take a gander at the Inditex financials. Now there's always a chance that Google Finance has changed the interface that you're seeing here. Just in case, you should be able to still poke around on the page and find everything we're looking for. Now the first thing that I want to do is I want to highlight BME:ITX. I'm going to put that in my spreadsheet. So I'm going to copy with a Command-C. That'd be Control-C on Windows. Then head back to Excel. Then I'll click in cell A2. I'll type in symbol, dash, and then I'll paste in the BME:ITX. Then I'll head down to cell A4, and this is where we can start entering our financials. So I'm going to head back to the browser. Now I've recorded this in late August of 2020. So the numbers that you're looking at may look different than mine. The dates might look different as well. So you should be using whatever dates and financials are available. But I'm going to scroll down until I see quarterly financials. And I see this shows the latest quarter here. For me, this happens to be April 2020. We also see on the right-hand side Y/Y means what's been happening year over year, comparing this quarter to the same quarter for the previous year. And the downturn isn't surprising because this is the COVID quarter. But I'm going to go down here where it says more financials, and I'm going to click on that. Now this opens up a new page, and if I scroll down and take a look at quarterly financials again, I can see there are 4 tabs along the top, which are the latest 4 quarters of available financial data. You may see different quarters that are up here, so just use whatever dates and financials are available, but you can see over here on the left-hand side, it's highlighted in blue on my screen. It says April 2020, so that's the latest quarter, and that's what's clicked, so that's the tab of the data that's showing. Now, if I want to see the earliest quarter that's available, I can click over here on the right. For me, this happens to be July 2019. Yours might be different. So when I click that, notice that the numbers change. And I'm going to use the month and the year to represent the different quarters in my worksheet. So I'm going to return to Excel. And in cell A4, I'm going to enter the name of the quarter exactly as it was listed, capital JUL space 2019. Now, if your quarter is something different, please enter the month and year for that quarter. And when I press return, hey, look at this. Excel automatically reformats this. Now, what's going on in here? Well, I'm going to press the up arrow key to head back to cell A4. And if you take a look up in the formula bar, you say, hey, mine says 7/1/2019. What Excel did was it recognized what I typed in there, capital JUL 2019, and it formatted that as a date. Since I didn't give it any specific date, it just said the month and the year, Excel assumed that I was going to begin on the first day of the month. Now you should have a date in here. There's a chance that your date is in a slightly different format, but we're going to show you in just a bit how to change the date format. But this is something that's important for us to know. Not only can you enter regular numbers, but if the value that you've entered into the cell looks like a date to Excel, Excel will format that as a date and treat it as a date. Now there are special formatters that work on dates, formatting them in all sorts of different ways, and there are even functions that can be used to perform date calculations, looking at the differences between dates and things like that. So let's right arrow over to B4 and head back to our browser so that we can get the revenue data. Now, as we look at this data, we don't see a currency symbol, but up here to the left, just above revenue, it says EUR. That confirms that the numbers that we're looking at are valued in euros, not in dollars. Now, again, use the data that's available to you, but for me, in July 2019, I've got the revenue of 6.89 billion. So I'm going to highlight that, but I noticed down below, well, my net income is in millions, so I should really convert my billions to millions. So I'm going to highlight this value, I'm going to copy it, head back to Excel. And I'm in cell B4, so I'm going to click up into the formula bar and I'm going to paste the value in there. Now this isn't going to show up as a number because it's got a B at the end. And if Excel sees that you've got a number, but there are some letters in there, it won't treat that as a number. It'll treat it as if it's straight text. So removing the text in the cell, in this case the B, will make sure that Excel treats this value as a number. And I'll also change this value from billions to millions by converting it to 6,890. Then I'll tab over to cell C4, head back to the browser. I see my net income is 815 million, and I won't bother copying this. I'll just head back to Excel and I'll type in 815. And you should enter whatever net income you're looking at for your earliest quarter. Now when I press return, this brings me back to A5. Back in the browser, I'll click on the tab for my next quarter. That's October 2019. I'll remember the revenue is 7 billion. My net income value, I'm going to highlight and copy that. That's 1.17 billion. And then back in Excel, I'm going to enter Oct 2019 in cell A5, tab over, enter 7,000, which is 7 billion in millions, in B5. And in C5, I'm going to paste in the 1.17B, but I'm going to change that to 1,170. Now back in the browser, my next tab is for January 2020. I'm going to deliberately skip this third quarter. I want to demonstrate some things that happen with formulas versus functions when you insert a row. So I'm going to click on my latest quarter for available data. That's April 2020. For you, click on whatever quarter is your latest financials, and I'm going to return to the spreadsheet and enter these values. For me, that's APR 2020. The revenue should be 3,300, which is 3.3 billion, and the net income is negative 409. Not only do they not have any profits, but they lost 409 million euros this quarter. That's COVID. It was brutal. So let's put our totals for these three quarters in row 7. So in A7, I'm going to type in capital total. Then in B7, I'm going to enter a formula to total up B4 through B6. Now I'm deliberately not going to use a function because I'm going to illustrate something that happens with formulas versus functions. So I'm going to type in an equal sign, and you can enter this formula any way you like, but it should be B4 plus B5 plus B6, then press return, and the value is calculated perfectly. That's 17,190 million. I've got a formula in B7, so I'm going to put a function in C7. So make sure that you're in C7, and I'm going to use the auto sum. So I'm going to click on the sigma in the upper right-hand corner. Excel puts in the function for me, equals sum, in between parentheses. It perfectly selects the exact range I want, C4 through C6. Thank you very much, Excel. Press return. Perfect calculation. Now, why don't we format these numbers in euros? So I'm going to highlight from C7 up to B4. Now that I've got this range selected, I'm going to click on the little down arrow right next to the dollar sign, and I'm going to select euro. This format left aligned the currency symbol. And also note what this format does with negative values. Instead of putting a minus out front, negative values are surrounded in parentheses. So we've got lots of different options, and let's explore some of these. So let's head up to the pull-down menu that says accounting. And when we select any of the currency options that are in the pull-down next to the dollar sign icon, that sets things to what's called the accounting format. So that's why we see accounting in here. And I'm going to click to pull down on this menu, and I'm going to select more number formats. This pulls up the format cell dialog. I can see the different categories on the left. Accounting is selected because that's the current format that's being used in the selection that I have highlighted, B4 through B7, but I'm going to go under category here and I'm going to click on currency. And I can see that I've got 4 different options here for the different currency formats. If I click on this option right here on the bottom, I can see that's not only going to list negative values in parentheses, but it's also going to highlight them in red. Now you might notice that right underneath sample, it has a value that shows euro 1,576.00. And it got this value from your worksheet. If you take a look over on your worksheet, the primary cell that's highlighted in our range is cell C7, and the value there is also 1,576.00. So Excel will take any data that's in the cell that's highlighted and use that as an example to show you what the selected formatting is going to look like if you click OK. I like what I'm seeing here, so I am going to click on OK. And we see the euro symbol now moves just to the left of our numbers, but for our negative value, that's got parentheses around it, and it's listed in bright red. Nice. Now I also want to get rid of the decimal places, so I'm going to go up to this reduce decimal icon, and I'm going to click that twice. No more decimals. Now for the reason why we skipped our third quarter. We're going to insert a new row for the quarter that we missed, and we want to see what happens with the function versus the formula when we insert a new row. So I'm going to click on the 6th row here, right on the number 6. Notice the entire row is highlighted, and if I right-click on 6, on the Mac, right-click is the 2-finger click. That brings up a context-sensitive menu showing everything that I can apply to this whole row, which is selected, and I'm going to select insert. Now what this is going to do when I let go is it inserts a row just above the row that I'd highlighted. So now the row that was the 6th row is the 7th row, and I've got an empty row for the 6th row. So now let's head back to the browser and get data for the quarter that we skipped. And for me, I had skipped the quarter that was January 2020. Yours is probably different. And my revenue here was 8.47 billion, and my net income was 919 million. To make things easier, I'm going to highlight 8.74B, Copy that, then I'll head back to Excel to enter these values. In A6, I'm going to enter Jan 2020. And in B6, I'm just going to do a paste in here and watch what happens. The shortcut for paste is Command V Mac, Control V Windows. And when I paste directly into this cell, the paste also includes any formatting that was copied over from the web page. Now I don't want that to happen here. It changed the font. It also used a bigger point size. But you can actually avoid this by, instead of pasting directly into the cell, pasting into the formula bar. So first I'm going to do an undo. That's Command Z on the Mac, Control Z on Windows. Then I'm going to click into the formula bar and I'm going to paste in there. Now when you paste into the formula bar, you just paste in whatever text is on the clipboard. You don't paste in any of the formatting data. Now I'm going to modify this so that it's a real number and not text. So that's 8,470, and watch what happens in cell B8 when I press return. Right now on my worksheet, I've got the value 17,190 in here, but when I press return to add this new value, hey, nothing changed. How come? Let's take a look at cell B8, and sure enough, the formula that we still have in here is B4 plus B5 plus B7. So when I inserted a row, it didn't change the original formula. Now let's see what happens if we head over to C6. Now remember, in cell C8, this is where we've used the sum function instead of a formula. So the value for my quarter in cell C6 should be 919. Now I'm not pressing return yet, but take a look at the value in C8. It's 1576. I'm going to press return and ho-ho! It properly recalculated. Now I'm seeing it's 2495. How come that happened? Well, let's click in cell C8 and take a look at the function, and we see this function uses a range. When I insert a row in between the values of this range, Excel shifted the end value of the range down by one row. So C6 became C7, and the new row that was inserted was part of the range C4 colon C7 because it was in between those values. So this is an important point about functions versus formulas, and more specifically about using ranges in formulas. When you use a range, any value inserted in between the range becomes part of that range. So that's what happens when you insert a row. And if we double click on cell C8, we can see that Excel highlights the range C4 colon C7, but if we double click on cell B8, we see the formula only has 3 cells. It doesn't include cell B6. Now I'd like to demonstrate what happens if you delete a row, but before we do that, I want to change the formula in B8 so that it includes B6. So let's update that so that it reads equal sign B4 plus B5 plus B6 plus B7. Press return, so that calculates properly. And now let's see what happens when we delete row 6. So I'm going to right click on row 6 on the Mac. That's the 2-finger click. That brings up our context sensitive menu, and I can see right under insert is delete. But before I select delete, let's take a look at cell C8. For me, this is listed as 2495. So now I'm going to select delete, and that deletes row 6, and so now row 7 is row 6. The former C8 is now C7. It's perfectly recalculated on my worksheet. I get 1576, but hey, look what happened in B7. We get a number sign, capital REF exclamation point. This is Excel telling us that we have an error in that cell. If I click on cell B7, let's take a look at what shows up in the formula bar. It says B4 plus B5 plus number sign REF exclamation point plus B6. That's because we deleted the cell that used to be in here. And in the left-hand side of this cell, you see that there's a little yield sign. You can click on that if you want to see a little bit more about what this error is. It says that that's an invalid cell reference error. That again means we were referring to a cell that does not exist. Now we could fix this in a few different ways. One thing that we could do is we could go up into the formula in the formula bar, highlight in backspace over ref to correct our formula, but it's even better for us to go ahead and use a function. So instead, let me start before I even did the deletion. I'm going to undo the delete step. That's Command Z on the Mac, Control Z on Windows, and my row comes back. But now I'm going to click on cell C8. I'm going to click on the fill handle. That's a little box in the lower right-hand corner. Now you'll know you're on top of the fill handle because Excel changes the cursor to a black plus sign, not the white plus sign. I'm going to drag to the left, and that's going to copy the formula that's in C8, and it's going to put it in B8. And if we click back over in B8, we can see now that says equal sum B4 through B7. Excel took the formula that was in C8, and it put it in B8, but it did what we would call a relative reference shift of the cell range, changing the C's to B's since we dragged from right to left. Nice. Now let's look at some of the other concepts in Excel, specifically arithmetic operators and operator precedence. Now, Excel formulas can use several arithmetic operators or symbols to perform formula arithmetic. So addition is plus, subtraction is minus, but multiplication is the asterisk. It's not the X like you used when writing out multiplication times tables in grade school. And division is the slash. Now that's the slash with the top leaning to the right. It's not the forward slash, it's not the division symbol, which isn't even on most computer keyboards. And now if you create a formula using these symbols, they don't just evaluate left to right. There's a specific precedence order used when calculating values. And if you don't pay attention to this, you can run into some problems. And we'll illustrate this right now on our worksheet. So let's imagine we wanted to get average value for quarterly revenues and profits. Why don't we write a label in cell A9, we'll put average in there, and then in cell B9, we'll add the formula equals B4 plus B5 plus B6 plus B7, and for division, we'll say /4. So this looks good, right? This is a basic formula for calculating the average of values. We add up the values, and then we divide that by the total number of values. So let's press return, and oh, this is not at all correct. So what happened? Well, since Excel performs division ahead of addition, B7 was divided by 4, and then that value was added to B4, B5, and B6. Not at all the real average. So how do we fix this? Well, we can surround the addition part of the equation in parentheses. Then outside of the parentheses, we can say /4 to perform the division only after we first added up all the values inside the parentheses. Now the parentheses have the highest precedence, so anything inside of parentheses is evaluated first and together. So now I've got my formula in here, and what's going to happen is B4, B5, B6, and B7 will be added up first because I've got parentheses around them, and then that value will be divided by 4. Press return, and there we go. We've got our accurate quarterly average. And in fact, here's the precedence order for common Excel arithmetic operators. So parentheses are evaluated first, then the negative symbol. Now this isn't subtraction, even though it's the same symbol, but negative is the minus sign in front of numbers or an expression wrapped in parentheses. Then comes percentage. That takes a value and divides it by 100. So 100% is the same as 1, 50% equals 0.5. Then comes this upward pointing arrow. This is sometimes referred to as the caret. Caret is C-A-R-A-T, not the vegetable, and that means exponent, or take the value to the power of. So for example, 3 caret 2 equals 3 squared, which equals 9. Now here's something that likely differs from what you learned in grade school. In Excel, multiplication and division have the same precedence, and if they're on the same line, they're evaluated left to right. So 9 divided by 2 times 2 equals 9. And then after that comes addition and subtraction. Those both have equal precedence as well, and if they're on the same line, they're evaluated left to right. That's also likely different than you learned in grade school, so 4 minus 2 plus 1 equals 3. Now, when you learned precedence in grade school, you might have learned a mnemonic like My Dear Aunt Sally for multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So here's one that you could use if you find it useful. Parents, negative personalities exist. Mind your daughters and sons. But if that doesn't help, ignore it or think up your own. Now, we actually didn't have to do all that calculation because there is an average function, but it was useful in helping us illustrate the issues around precedence. Why don't we head over to C9 and use the average function? So I'm going to first type in equals and then start to type the word average. Now we see a bunch of different kinds of average functions in here. There's average A, average if S, D average. We just want the one that's just plain average. So I'm going to use my down arrow key, highlight average, and I'm going to press the tab key, and we can see Excel fills in the average function and adds the open parenthesis. Now underneath I see a help call out, sort of like a tooltip. The word average looks like it's hyperlinked, kind of like you'd see as a link on a web page, and that's exactly how this works. So let's click on the blue highlighted average that we see here, and Excel will bring up a help page. Now this gives us a description of the average function, it shows us how it's used. So with Excel, help is always just a click away. Now we can see in the description it says that this gives us the arithmetic mean. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to close this window, I don't need any more help, and I'm going to select my range. So I'm going to click in cell C4, hold down my mouse, drag down to C7, make sure you don't select C8, that's got the total line in it, then release the mouse, press return, and we get our average. Mine is 624, meaning 624 million. Now that's much better than the formula that I wrote before. This is a single function. If we inserted or deleted rows as part of the range, that would work fine. So I'm going to click back on C9, and I'm going to use the fill handle in C9 to copy this into B9. I'm going to drag this to the left, and if we go back into B9, we can verify it now has the average function inside of it, but with the range B4 through B7. Good work. Now let's format this worksheet a little bit more. Why don't we add a couple more rows just above the quarter revenue and income headers. So you can insert multiple blank rows. And one way we can do this is we can highlight the number of rows that we want to insert, and they'll be added just above our highlighting. So if I click in the 3 that highlights the third row, hold down my mouse and drag down to 4, I've highlighted 2 rows. Then I can right click, bring up the context sensitive menu, select insert, and 2 rows are added just above what used to be the 3rd row, but which is now the 5th row. Cool. Now just above these headers in A4, I'm going to put in some explanatory text. I'm going to say in between parentheses, figures in millions of euros. Then I want to boldface anything that's not a number, so I'm going to perform a non-adjacent selection. Remember we learned that in the previous video. First, I'll click and drag from A1 down to A11, and on the Mac, I'll hold down the Command key, on Windows, hold down the Control key, and I'll click from B5 and drag to C5. And then since I'm in the Home tab, I can click the bold-faced B icon, and that makes everything in the selection bold. I'm going to perform a little bit more formatting on the text that's in cell A4. So I'm going to click in A4, and first thing I want to do is I want to decrease the font size. Now I could pull down on this menu that lists the font size as 12 points, but just to the right of this you see a large A and a small a. The large A increases the font size, the small a decreases it. I'm going to click on the decrease font twice, and we can see that the point size goes down to 10. And I'll also italicize everything in this cell by clicking on the italicized I, which is just to the right of the bold-faced B. And since the contents of A4 is just descriptive text, I'm going to remove the boldface by clicking the highlighted B icon. The highlighting on the icon goes away. This turns off the bold formatting. These icons are toggles, and the formatting can be turned on or off with just a click. Now let's take a look at formatting dates. So let's first select our dates. These are the values that are in A6 through A9, so I'm going to highlight those. And the dates are right aligned by default, but if I click on the left align icon, I can see that the dates move over to the left side of their cells. And if we look at our number format pull down, we can see that it's now listed as custom. But if we go up to the number format menu, we can pull down and we can see short date and long date formats. Let's select short date, and if you're in the US or a nation that uses the same format as the United States, you see the date listed numerically as the number for month/day/year. If your computer is configured for different regions, you might be showing the short format for that region. For example, a good portion of the rest of the world uses the day/month/year format. Now, if you go back to the number format and select long date, this shows the weekday as well as the full month, comma, day, and the year in 4 digits. And let's see if we can customize this a little bit further. So let's go back up to the number formats pull down and choose more number formats. And in the dialog box that shows up, note that the date is the highlighted category, but I've got lots of different options in here under date. Now the top line under sample shows what the sample date would look like when formatted in the selection made below. So right now it says Monday, July 1st, 2019. This also happens to be the value in my selected cell A6. So if I click on the format that says MAR-12, we see that that'll show up with the date formatted as the abbreviated month with 3 characters, then a dash, then the last 2 digits of the year. No day in this format, so that's probably better for displaying quarterly values. And I can see my July 1st, 2019 value showing up here in the sample as JUL-19. If I click OK, I see the format is applied to the entire selection. That's what I had previously, so I just reset things back to my original date format, but I can further customize this, and I'll give you a taste of how you can do this so that you can know enough to explore further on your own. So let's go back up to that number formats pull down and select more number formats again. Now date once again is a selected category, but if we select custom this time at the bottom of the category list, we see the custom date format codes. Now when we look at this, we can make an educated guess as to what these formats do. So I see, for example, in this format, even though I don't understand all of it, I've got 3 M's and a dash and 2 Y's. And my date sample up top shows the month as 3 letters, and then there's a dash, and then there's the year represented by 2 numbers. I wonder if we can get the year to show up as 4 numbers simply by changing this date formatter code so that it has 4 Y's instead of 2. And when I type in 2 Y's, we can see, hey, yup, we can see the sample up top shows the format with the full year with 4 digits. Nice. Click OK. This reformats all of our highlighted dates. Looking good. So what if we wanted to get rid of that dash that was in between the month and the year? Well, if we head back up to the number format pull down and we select more number formats, we see our date formatter code shows a dash in between the 3 M's and the 4 Y's. So let's see what happens if we remove the dash between the M's and the Y's and replace that with just a blank space. Hey, the sample shows that that's exactly what we wanted. No dash, but a space. So we'll select OK, and our dates look even sharper. So we've just scratched the surface here, but remember, now that you've got the basics, you can search online for more help. So for example, if I head over to the browser and I search for Excel 365 custom date format codes, the first page that shows up is from Microsoft Support. Click this page and you see all sorts of detailed information and examples for creating your own custom date formats. Looking good. Now I'm going to close this browser tab, head back to Excel, and I'd like to change the width of column A. Now if I use the technique we learned in the prior video, double-clicking on the line in between the columns, this auto-formats the width to the minimum needed for the largest cell. But that's not really what I want. I don't care if the cells from A1 through A4 spill over into the other cells. In fact, that's actually what I want them to do. But I do want to shrink the column width so that it fits to just the width of the values from A5 through A11. So I'm going to highlight those values, and notice on the Home tab ribbon, there is a Format pull down up here on the right. It's just below the Insert and the Delete pull down. So if we pull down here, we can see that there is an option that says Auto Fit Column Width. And that performs an auto fit based on the cells that are selected. I'm going to select this, and the cells auto format perfectly. Nice! Now, sometimes you're not sure where the option you're looking for is located in Excel, but there are lots of options to find help. I'll show you just one. First, I'm going to stretch out column A again so that we can see it resize with the new option I'm about to show you. Then let's get some help for finding how to auto-fit the column width. Now, up here in the tabs above the ribbon, there's a light bulb that says Tell Me. Now, if we click that, we get a search box and we can type in any phrase that we'd like to get help on. So let's type in column width. And we see a bunch of different options here. One says Format. I'm going to use my arrow keys to move down to Format. There's an arrow pointing to the right, so I'm going to press the right arrow on my keyboard. And hey, here is a menu. I see there are lots of options here, and one of them is Auto Fit Selection. That sounds like it'll do the trick. So I'll use the arrow keys on my keyboard to select that option, press Return, and sure enough, that auto fits the selection too. So we see another great way to get help in Excel and to find just what we need to get the job done. Now, your instructor might give you a special way to name and submit this file. If not, why don't you go ahead and save this and call it Inditex Financials. Well, Excel friends, now you've got a host of new skills to add to your increasing spreadsheet prowess. We covered finding and using online corporate financial data, dates in Excel, formatting dates with the short, long, and custom options, inserting and deleting rows. We took a look at formulas versus cell ranges when inserting and deleting rows, cell reference errors, operators, operator precedence, the average function, getting help in Excel, font formatting, and auto fit to selection. It's been fun working with you. I hope you feel your Excel skills are growing, and remember, be excellent to each other.